Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Unstoppable Leader podcast with your host, Maria Tenacity. Now, today we talk to Jack Daly. Jack Daly is an amazing human being. He's a 15-time Ironman competitor and has completed over 95 marathons in all of the 50 states in the US and over 7 continents. Now, Jack is not just a leading sales speaker and Amazon best-selling author, but he has built not 1 or 2, but 6 super successful businesses, 2 of which he sold to Wall Street. We talked about how Jack got started in sales at the age of 13, and he shares some of his successes and his struggles. The episode is so full of many pearls of wisdom that I had to go back and listen to it myself again. So I hope you get a lot of wisdom and inspiration from this very special human being. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Unstoppable Leader podcast with your host, Maria Tenacity. And with me today, I have one of the most highest energy human beings I've met in my life, and that is the Unstoppable Leader, Jack Daly. Welcome, Jack.
Maria, I've had this on my schedule for weeks,
yes.
and we're finally here, and I truly am energized and excited to be here with you.
Now, you know, I actually wrote this whole introduction and I had like 2 pages, so I've had to cut it short because I could keep talking about you forever. So a little bit about Jack, He is one of the world's leading sales speakers and trainers. He delivers unbelievably high energy workshops. And if you have not been to one of his workshops, I highly recommend at least once in your life, you've got to go and see him. Jack started his career as a CPA at Arthur Andersen and rose to the ranks of CEO of several corporates. And Jack, you built 6 businesses, not 1 or 2, but 6 successful businesses, 2 of which you sold to Wall Street firms. And Jack is a Amazon best-selling author who's written and contributed to many books, including my favorite, Hyper Sales Growth and the Sales Playbook, which I run our business by. And on a personal note, now I may have the numbers wrong because I don't know how many marathons and Ironmans you've now finished, but last count, 15 Ironman competitions. Is that right, Jack? Or more?
15 full Ironmans, yeah.
15. And you've completed 93 marathons, or is that number a lot higher now?
It's 95. Yes.
95. And you've done all states in the US and 7 continents, Jack.
Yep. I have made the journey. Best I've been able to try to figure out, Maria, there's less than 200 people in the world that have done all 50 state marathons in the US and all the 7 continents.
Wow.
I think it's because the non-US people that do the continents are not motivated to do the 50 states.
Of course.
And then the 50 state people, there's about 800 are evidently aren't motivated to visit all the continents, especially Antarctica, I guess.
Yes, in the cold. Now, doesn't seem appealing to me either, Jack, but then again, you are a unique human being. So I have to start with the building of the businesses because, you know, a lot of people build 1 or 2 successful businesses. How the heck did you do 6 of them, Jack? Like, how did you?
Well, before we go there,
yes.
Those businesses all were built between the ages of 26 and 46 years old. So those are my adult businesses. But my first sales job was at 7 years old, and I owned the market and charged twice the price of every kid I competed with. And then at 12, I became a newspaper boy, delivering newspapers to people's homes. And I took a newspaper route over from a kid that had it before me. It was 32 customers. And a year later, I had 275 customers because I love selling. And
wow.
But 275 papers to deliver door to door after you've gone to school all day is a big job.
Wow.
And doesn't allow me to sell. And that's what I really enjoyed doing. And so I came up with the idea to hire 5 kids to deliver the papers for me. And I kept 70% of the money and paid them 30%. And that was the day that I realized I want to be an entrepreneur and build businesses. So at 13, I interviewed 200 successful business owners over the summer. And I spent at least 4 hours with each one. And I wanted to know how they became so successful and what they would tell me to do and not do and those types of things. And there was some consistency in what they said. Many of them said you had to have goals. Secondly, they needed to be written down. Third, not to pick too many. To put a date when you were going to get accomplished them, and then to give them to as many people as possible to put the heat on you, to put pressure on.
Wow.
We would call that accountability today. So I picked 4 areas of my life: financial, professional, education, and family. And I pictured myself, what am I going to look like in those 4 boxes by the age of 30? And once I understood what the destination was, then mapping out the journey was a lot easier. And so one of the big things as an entrepreneur is we run into a lot of people that are trying to build a business, but they can't articulate very well what it's going to look like when they're done. And so Stephen Covey said it better than anyone: begin with the end in mind.
Absolutely.
So I found that I'm most thrilled, most excited about taking a blank sheet of paper and just doodling a company of what it's going to look like if I were to build it, what it would look like when I would sell it. And I'm a build and sell entrepreneur. I never really wanted to keep something for the rest of time or pass it on to my kids. I really like the build out period. When you got 9 balls in the air and you're juggling them all and hoping none of them drops, and you're not sure how you're going to make payroll and how you're going to hire this person and all of the complexities. How am I going to finance the growth of this company? I live in Southern California, but I grew up in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. When I moved out here, I moved for the weather because I'm an endurance athlete. And I brought 3 people with me, and we started this company. And the 4 of us, 18 months later, all organic growth had grown to 750 employees in 18 months. And so one of the things you have to figure out when you're going to build something at that fast of a growth pace is, how am I going to finance it? Where am I going to get the money to be able to pay the bills and to feed this growth machine? I know how to sell. I know how to hire people that can sell. But can I make the company cash flow positive while I'm growing? Because I don't want to hold back the growth. So I love all of that. But then all of a sudden, when the company gets to be that 500, 600, 700 people, there's a lot of process and system and structure. And all of a sudden it's like, gosh, my freedom. I mean, I feel like it's my company, but I feel like I went to work for someone. I don't want to work for anyone. I want to go build a company. And so you just sell that one and go build another one. And so that's what I did until I was 46. And I had a great run. I was very blessed. Not to say that we didn't have some hiccups along the way. As a speaker, you tend to tell the positive stories, but almost every one of my businesses, I lived in hell, where I was on the border of not making it, and had to be concerned about my children and my wife and all those things while keeping it all together. Fortunately, I was able to break through the barriers, the hurdles, and those types of things. But anybody that builds companies and is an entrepreneur that tells you that that it was a smooth ride all the way, I'm thinking they're fibbing.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I was going, wow. It almost sounds easy when you said the first part of it, but I was kind of glad you kind of said the second part of it, because for our listeners are thinking, wow, this human being is exceptional, and I don't feel that exceptional. How do I do what Jack does, right? Like you just hear that story and he goes, wow, it's just so far out of reach, Jack. That's how it feels. So I was just thinking, could you share maybe some of those really tough moments and how you broke through them? Maybe even 1 or 2 of them in those 6 businesses, Jack, something that almost crushed you, but then you made it past.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 as succinctly as possible. One of them, in 1998, our company was honored as the 10th fastest growing privately held company in the US. It's called the Inc. 500. Inc. magazine ranks the 500 fastest growing privately held companies. We were number 10 on the list that year with 10,100% growth in 3 years. That same year, Ernst & Young honored us as Entrepreneurs of the Year. That's the part that I usually use if I'm on stage and telling people who I am. Now I'm going to tell you the other part. The part that goes unsaid is that same year that we got those honors. And by the way, the company was making $1 million a month in profit
Wow.
during that same year. Later on that same year, I stood in front of our 275 employees and let 240 of them go in a single day. And we downsized to 35 people in one day. And we went in a single month from making $1 million in profit to $1 million in losses. And the reason had to do with a lot of external factors that were going on in the world marketplace. And we were in the money business. And the product that we're dealing with just went away overnight. Wall Street decided I'm not buying any of it any longer. And our company was built to deliver that product. So we were forced with the decision, do you just go BK and call it a day, or do you try to pare it down to a bare bones staff and rebuild with a new product, but it'll require a whole rebuild? And we chose the second in the rebuild process. Today, I can tell you, I no longer own that company, but one of the three partners that I was in partnership with does own that company. And today it's larger than it was at its height when we were winning all those awards. So there is life after death, so to speak. But we chose not to go the bankruptcy route. So that's tough sledding. Another one is that I was 2 steps removed from the chairmanship of a Fortune 200 company in my 30s. And I was running a pretty substantial company with about somewhere, I was carrying a debt load of somewhere around $700 million a year to just satisfy the needs of the business. And one day, the grandfather of corporate raiders came in an unfriendly takeover and took over the business. And I had a golden parachute that wasn't honored, and I couldn't work for the person because their values were inconsistent with mine. And so I've got a young family that I got responsibility for. I was a big shot in the financial world. Everyone in the executive ranks in the U.S. knew who I was. And one day I was out looking for a job. Fortunately, I had enough of a reputation to bounce back pretty quickly. But, the world that I was in, which was headed for a unique stardom, the rug got pulled out from under me. And, that's life. And that's going to happen, whether you think it isn't or you think it is. I can tell you unforeseen things do happen. And the key is to realize that it's not you, that it's not unique to you, and that the most important thing is you need to just step up and bounce back.
Can I ask you, Jack, in those moments, especially the one day that you had to lay off, that over 200 people that you had to lay off, what are a couple of things that you do that are practical that you do that perhaps you could share when you're in that absolute low? Like right now, there are so many businesses with COVID at that point, and some just don't feel like getting up and getting out of bed. What are 2 things or one thing that you could share that's practical, that gets you out of bed and just gets you to bounce back? I mean, you're an amazing bounce backing person, if there's even a word like that.
Yeah. So here's a few things, and I really appreciate you asking that question and tying it in with the unusual period of time, the pandemic that we're in. The first and foremost thing is taking care of yourself physically. And, you follow me on social media, and I'm pretty active in letting people know what I'm doing and how I'm doing in that arena. When the love of my life, Karen, who I was married for 47 years to Bonnie, and I lost her to cancer in 2017 and didn't think that I'd ever have another woman in my life. And a 20 plus year client surfaced, and now we are a couple. And Karen said to me, now that we're together as a couple, she said, I never understood why you post all of the things that you post on social media, but now I get it, because I go out socially with you and meet people, and they go, yeah, you inspired me to do this. How did I inspire you? Well, every day you're posting that you did this and that and this. And I just say, well, get up off my lazy ass and do something.
Yes.
And so Karen said, you've inspired me over my years, but I never really put it together. So the first thing that I say is this: take care of yourself physically, health and fitness. You and I, Maria, have had a coaching relationships for a few years. And, a topic that's of most important to me is how are you taking care of yourself physically? And that's the priority, because if we don't take care of ourselves physically, we're actually not anywhere near as good as we can be in our business and to our family. And if not taking care of yourself physically, what else is more important than that, right? Yeah. So I run into people, and I've become somewhat of there was a guy in the U.S. that was famous for his physical fitness routine. His name was Jack LaLanne. And on planes, people come up to me and say, I think you're the new Jack LaLanne, because of how much I'm devoting my life to fitness. But I at 28 years old, I decided that I was going to live to 125. And I really believe that. And it's on my website in my bucket list to live to 125. And you will, Jack. So I prioritize taking care of myself, fitness and health and exercise. I'm watching other people on social media, and here's what I'm hearing. Now they're in lockdown, and their lives have changed, and they're working out of their homes and all these different behavior things. And I'm still hearing those same lame excuses how do I find the time? Well, how do you find the time to post on social media? Does anybody have any movie recommendations? I've been through everything on Netflix. Or somebody that's posting COVID-20. Now, you probably haven't heard of COVID-20. No. COVID-19 you've heard of, but COVID-20 is, since COVID-19 began, I've put 20 pounds on. And so that's COVID-20. And because they're sitting around and just stuffing their face, and they're not getting any exercise. And I don't want to hear about the gyms are closed or any of those excuses. So you're either serious about your taking care of your health and fitness, or you're not. But I can tell you, when you're confronted with making decisions about whether you go out of business or whether you let 240 people of 275 go, you can make clearer and better decisions, and you can stay strong in the decision by taking care of yourself physically. So that's item number one. Yeah. Item number two is focus on that which you have control over. And I do CEO coaching with people all over the world on the phone. And I'm saying, look, this is a difficult period in our lives. I've gone through some very difficult things in my life, but nothing of this magnitude. But what I can tell you is, it doesn't do any good to be forever watching the television spew all of their negativity. How many people have COVID? How many people were tested? How many people have died? What is going on here? Where is the vaccine? What's the stat? I failed science in school. Okay, I failed science. I was pretty good academically throughout, but science was my bugger. Therefore, I can tell you, I will not positively contribute to any degree on the vaccine. So if it's got to do with the vaccine, I turn it off. I turn it off completely, because I when it's ready, then shoot me in the arm with it and I'm good to go. But until then, I don't want to hear about the vaccine, and I don't want to hear about the people dying, and I don't want to hear about all of how long it's going to take. I don't have control over that. So what I do is I try to narrow the focus and say, what is it that I have control over? For example, I'm a professional speaker, and I make my living out of traveling the world and being in front of large groups of people. Last year, I visited over 30 countries. The planes aren't flying anywhere. The countries won't let me get in anywhere. 38 states of the 50 states won't even allow me to visit their state because I'm in California, and because they're afraid that I've got COVID. And so, and if I got on the plane and got to a destination, I'd have to speak to an empty room because nobody's allowed to be in a room together anyway. So my business is not in my control. So what can I do in the interim? So I took the first 4 months of the pandemic and allocated a significant amount of time to write my next book. I was going to write it next year. I've written it now. I also built this list, and I can show you this list. It sits right handily on my desk. And it was dated March the 30th of this year. And I wrote down every name that I could think of. And by the way, I'm old school. I don't have this sitting in some electronic database.
But there's something in the power of writing, Jack, anyway.
And these are the over 1,000 people that I wanted to pick up the phone and say, hey, how are you faring? Is there anything I can do to help you? And I have control over that. I can tell you the amount of cards and emails and messages that I've gotten back saying, I don't know how you found the time to reach out and call me, but my God, when you called me, it was the absolute best time. I was in a low of my life and you picked me up, and I'll forever remember that. And so I know that I have control over that. I know that I have control over this, that I can work up what I'm going to work on today. Like a daily plan. Now, you and I have been together enough that you know that I make longer term plans, but the government keeps changing the rules every day. One day, I live at the beach in Southern California. One day, I'm allowed to go to the beach, but I have to have my body in motion the whole time and wear a mask. The next day, I can actually sit in a chair as long as I wear the mask. And if I go in the water, I can take the mask off, but as soon as I come out, I got to put it back on. The next day, I'm not allowed to be at the beach at all. The next day, and the rules keep changing. So why would I make a weekly or a monthly or an annual plan? So literally, I have old school again. There's my daily plan. And every day I write down everything I'm going to get done that day. Wow. And then as I'm moving through, I'm checking them off and I'm gaining momentum. These are the things I have control over. And every time that I start checking things off and making progress, it's like I'm not listening to all the negativity. I'm like, gosh, I'm getting some stuff done and I'm in my zone, a different zone, but in my zone, stuff I have control over.
Wow, Jack, that was amazing. So the two things for me is obviously look after yourself, because I mean, you've taught me this, Jack. Without your health, you're worth nothing. It doesn't matter how much money you have. So your health and your sanity and your fitness is important. The second thing is control the controllables. Is that a summary?
Yeah.
It's just because I think where you go downhill is when you start worrying about the things that you can't control. And I think every one of us has the inclination to do that, because when you're really low, you tend to do that. But I guess if you have somebody like yourself or anybody who could coach you out of that, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah, and sharing what it is that you want to do with somebody else or some other people just ups the ante in the game. It's really remarkable. I keep going back to Karen in this podcast, but she's with me all the time. It seems in my heart here and in my head.
Yes.
But we're playing off of each other so well that we're each bringing each other's game up without. It's not even with intent. And so if I'm up in the morning at 5 o'clock to go for a run, and she can't go for that run, she's already made in her daily plan when she's going to find that time for exercise. So as an example, our podcast today started at 4 p.m. on a Friday in California, and she and I intend on going to the pool for some lap swimming when I'm finished here. But she allocated the hour beforehand that she was going to be on the Peloton bike and the rower getting her exercise, because she couldn't make the run this morning when I was out there. And so that and so when she tells me that, then that just helped me get focused on what I'm going to do tomorrow. So that we don't have a break in our momentum. We're encouraging each other with our own behaviors.
Exactly. You've got an accountability partner in your life right now. Other than, because I know at one point you told me you have anywhere between 12 to 14 coaches in your life. Did you always have that, Jack? Even back when you were in your 20s and 30s? Did you have people like that in your life?
The number of coaches I take and put into myself changes over the years. So it's never no one.
Yeah.
Right? There's always someone, but sometimes it was down to one person. But I was a very active triathlete, and I haven't been an active triathlete for 4 years now. But when I was an active triathlete, I had 6 coaches just on that sport. And then, I had 5 on my on my personal goals and 3 on my business, right? So 14.
Wow.
And each brought a different, unique perspective. And, on my personal goals, the 5 people that I call the board of directors of my life, if you ever wanted to have pressure, and I'm an older guy, so I'm 71, but I don't act like 71, but I'm 71. But that means my kids are old, right? Yeah. So my daughter will be 49 this month. And she is one of my board of directors of my life. She's one of those 5 people who hold me accountable. So if you wanted to be a great mentor for your children, to put them on the accountability board, it adds so much more pressure, because you don't want to sit down and review what you said you were going to do and say, well, I just didn't get off my lazy ass and do anything. In the back of your mind, you're like, hey, wait a second, I'm mentoring this person. I need to step up my game. Right.
Oh, absolutely. You just gave me the brilliant idea of putting my son Roshan on my board of directors now. And he's a tough coach, Jack.
Really you know what? So I have 2 children, and Adam, Melissa is the 49-year-old, or 49 to be, but Adam is 41. And I would never put Adam on as one of my board of directors of my life, because he's too loose. But Melissa is, she's a tough cookie, and so she'll take me apart when I need to be taken apart.
Absolutely. One of the things that's toughest, you touched on the need for finance to grow a business, and I'll come back to that. But I think one of the hardest things I find, and a lot of peers that I've spoken to when you're growing the business, is attracting amazing players and team members and staff. You've always managed to do that, Jack. How do you do that? And not only do you attract them once, you keep them, and then you go and build 6 businesses and take them with you. How do you do that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I take them with me as much as some people follow.
Follow you, I know. They follow you wherever. I would follow you wherever.
I'm not robbing the last place, right? But one of the proud things that I have is that I had a company when I was in my 30s that I had 7 direct reports, and 6 of the 7 after I left went on to build their own companies as CEOs.
Wow.
And so, mentoring and building leaders to go off and do whatever their personal desires are is pretty good stuff, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to say something that certainly will be provocative, if not controversial. But if everybody buys everything that you're saying, then I'm not sure that you're walking the edge far enough out, right?
Absolutely.
So here's the thing. Steve Jobs went on to build an incredible company, the first company to ever hit $1 trillion in value, and now in 1 year has doubled, and now is valued at over $2 trillion. And yet, if I say the name Steve Jobs and say, tell me what you're thinking, you would say Apple. And if I said Apple, tell me what you're thinking, you would say Steve Jobs. And so there's the guy that started the company with Woz, and then came back and resurrected it from the dead. And when he passed away, how much of the company did he own? And the answer is single digit.
Wow.
And Bill Gates is usually listed in the top 5 wealthiest people on the planet, and he's the one that started Microsoft. And how much of Microsoft does he own? It's single digits again. And so, I watch entrepreneurs, and they're very protective of the ownership of the company. And sometimes, and I'm very judicious about how I do this. It's based on performance, but to give some equity ownership to attract and retain senior players is money incredibly well spent. So when I'm staffing a startup company, I'd like to hire a person that has already run something or built something that's equal to or greater than the size of the company I'm trying to build, because they're not going to be satisfied with the little startup that I have. But how do I attract and retain them? Well, buy into my vision and listen to my history. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. And here, if you perform at these levels, then you get some ownership in the company, right? So here's the best way to kind of frame that as a visual. You get a choice as an entrepreneur. You can have 100% ownership of the lemonade stand in front of your parents' house, or you can have a 10% share of the lemonade market worldwide.
Wow.
Which one would you prefer? Because you can run the lemonade stand with 100% ownership and never cut anyone in, and you don't have to worry about attracting and retaining really super talent. But if you want to own 10% share of the lemonade market worldwide, you're going to need some horses that know how to run.
Wow. Amazing tips, Jack. I should be taking notes rather than asking questions, I think, but I'm glad I'm recording this podcast. I'm just thinking, so you built all of those 6 with the goal to sell, didn't you? Because you're a builder and a seller.
Yeah.
So you knew right from the beginning that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah. The beauty of build to sell is before you start to build it, you can figure out what the timeline is, what the size is going to be, and who the potential buyers are and what they might be looking for, so that when you're building it, you don't add them on at the end. You build it in the construct. And if there's a way to have them become strategic partners of yours while you're involved in it, then it just becomes a very, just an evolutionary conversation. Probably half or more of the companies that I built and sold, the buyer actually broached me with the idea of buying. And I was almost like, oh, I had never even thought about that, when it was on the game plan all the way from the first of the year, right?
Wow. I have to ask now, you've got a unique background in that you were a CPA, Arthur Andersen guy, and then you're amazing in sales. Did that have an impact in how well you did? Because I having worked with you, Jack, you're amazing with the numbers. I mean, your attention to detail, again, super unusual combination to be a brilliant salesperson and watch the numbers like you do amazingly. Was that an absolute unique thing for you?
It's very funny because you've had the opportunity to see me on stage.
Yes.
And I'm very animated, and I don't have a canned speech, and I just can go all day and all that, right?
Yeah.
But so the weird part is actually that I was at Arthur Andersen as an accountant. The weird part is not the sales part. But here's what happened. Remember early on the podcast here, I said I interviewed 200 successful people when I was 13, and I took some kernels out of that. And one of the kernels that I took out of that was I understand the numbers, because so many entrepreneurs open up their business and they're good at sales, but they go out of business in less than 5 years because they haven't figured out how to make it run profitably. And so you've got to be protective of cash. You got to be protective of profit. You have to build your margins in, all of those types of things. And so they recommended that I go to school and understand numbers. And so I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's in business, because I took heed of what these successful people did. And then I would tell you that when you go to Arthur Andersen, it's all systems and process. Everything is system and process. And they just plug and play, these smart people, and say, here's the process. I can tell you I went to work for Arthur Andersen in 1971. All right. So I'm really dating myself. We're almost 50 years, right? Yeah. But I can tell you, if your responsibility on the audit was that you're supposed to audit cash, then what you used was Form 47. And Form 47 was 47 items that you had to go through and validate how the company's health was when it came to cash. And everybody in the system followed it that way. It didn't matter if you were in the Arthur Andersen's office of Buenos Aires or Sydney or Chicago at the home office for Form 47. And if you got transferred, it was Form 47. And there was something like that all the way through the organization at every level for everything that went on. And accounting is all about systems and processes. And so I said, well, then I'm going to take that concept and build my companies that are just system and process, everything. And so I'm famous now for being on stage and saying every sales organization should have a sales playbook with the best practices of sales in the organization, so that if my largest sales force was 2,600 salespeople. There aren't 2,600 best ways to sell the stuff. Figure out the best way, teach them the best way, practice the best way, and you'll be successful. So my education, bachelor's and master's and experience at Arthur Andersen, just validated bringing that over into the entrepreneurial world, where we're prone to kind of wing it a little bit more often. And so I just put the two together, and I think that produced an advantage to me in the business world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, is a little bit of fear too. They don't want to see the numbers because it actually shows the reality, Jack. I think that's generally in life as well as in business. So you kind of stick your hand in the sand.
I can't wait to see the numbers, right? It's all about the numbers. Being busy is not something that I want to give awards for, right? Yes. Results are what I want to give awards for. Sales, I'm not impressed with sales unless they're generating profit. And so profitable sales is the key. In so many entrepreneurial organizations, you ask what the size of their company is, and they'll give you the revenue number, or they'll give you the head count. If I could have a company that's making a ton of money profitably and has very few revenues and has very few people, if any, that's my ideal company. I have people that literally ask if they could spend a day at my house, at my home office, which is in my home, and just spend a day consulting with them. And so we'll agree to do that, and they'll show up, and we'll spend about the first 2 hours, and I get interrupted all the time, and they'll go, I need to ask you a question, Jack. Like, I thought that what we were going to spend our time on is how to build the sales team. And yet you keep asking all these questions as if we're not going to build the sales team. And I say to them, well, if we need to build a sales team, we're going to show you how to do that. But if I could build your company consistent with the vision that you want along the timeline and do it without a sales force, that would be nirvana. And they just start laughing and going, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, let's explore that first. And then if we have to, we'll find a way to build the sales team. But, managing people is a big task.
Yes.
And it's forever new people coming in and people leaving. And how do you find the good people and all the rest of that, and performance reviews? And gosh, if I could figure out how to run a business without the people, that would be pretty slick.
That would be. You're there now, though, Jack, but a lot of us are catching up. So there's a few of us there. Now, I have to get to the personal side of things, Jack, as in how you live life by design. And I remember reading about this. I don't remember whether it was one of your speeches. And you said at the age of 60, you decide, although at 13, you already had a plan to live till, forever, 125. Yeah. And at 13, you started. But at 60, you actually started writing this thing called a year in review. Is that right, Jack? Can you just talk to that? Because the way you measure everything, I mean, it's crazy. I actually always smile when I'm brushing my teeth because I remember you measure flossing every single day and drinking water. And every time I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I was like, oh, I have to floss because Jack actually measures flossing.
What a visual.
Sorry.
That's fine. So everyone's heard this expression, right? Things that get measured get done.
Yeah.
And why don't I just play off of the floss since we get such humor out of it? But it's a telling example. I never used to floss my teeth, and I would go to my dental appointment, and my gums would bleed. And they said, you need to floss your teeth. But when I would leave the dentist, I'd floss for a day and then I would just drop it. It just wasn't something that. And so I was on an airplane one day. I was reading one of those airline magazines, and it was written, the article was one page and was by a dentist. And it said something, the headline was something about, would you like to have another 5 years of life? And I read the article, and basically the dentist was saying, if you flossed your teeth 5 days a week compared to a non-flosser, you would get to live, on average, all other things being equal, an extra 5 years. And then the article went on to explain why, and it has to do with the plaque and then building up in the arteries and clogging your arteries and all that. And I said, gosh, I want to live to 125. I put that down at 28 years old in my life goals. This gets me 5 extra years, and all I got to do is take this silly string and wrap it, around my teeth every morning. I'm going to do that. And so I put it down as a goal, and then I have these people that hold me accountable, and I measure all my activities that I do every single day, and I summarize them by the day, I summarize by the week and the month and the quarter and the year, and I report to this accountability team. And I have I've flossed every day since then. How do I go to bed at night without getting a check mark next to floss? And so if you want to change your results, change your behavior, right?
Yes.
And so now I go to the dentist, my teeth don't bleed. My dentist says, my goodness, it's unbelievable. I don't have cavities. I don't have problems. And, my doctor says that, that I'm the equivalent of a guy in his 40s right now compared to the rest of the people that he sees. And so it's a competitive advantage. And so I track and measure an amazing amount of things. I'm a lifelong learner. And so I have a goal of reading so many books a year. And typically I'm going to read somewhere between 25 to 45 books a year. And in my bucket list, it says 1 year I want to read 52. And Karen and I, we have a little bit of a disagreement here because she does audiobooks and I do books somewhat old-fashioned. Mine's in a Kindle, but you actually visually got to read them. I could read a lot more books, if I were doing them audio, because I'd be out running and I'd be knocking out a book every other day with all the miles that I run. But that's not the 52 a year that I want. But I measure every day when I finish a book. It goes into my tracking system, and it takes me less than 5 minutes a day to track everything. And then we add it all up at the end of the week and the month and the quarter, and then report it accordingly. And because of that, I end up achieving all that what I want to do in terms of the books. But I would encourage people to go to jackdalysales.com and check it out. I post for the world to see my goals and the tracking and how I'm doing and all that. And, the flossing, we could dismiss it pretty easily and laugh about it. And I do, but I've seen massive things that are really important to us. For example, I as a person am naturally don't sleep that many hours a day. Mm-hmm. But I read that if you want to live a long and healthy life, you should be sleeping 8 hours a day. Right. And so I put that in my goals last year and started to measure how many hours of sleep I get every day and started going through the accountability. Last year, I averaged 7. And this year, I am 8 and a fraction per day. And I know that I wouldn't be at that level if it weren't for the tracking. And so it's, when it gets to be 8:30 at night and I'm going to get up at 5, well, if I got to bed at 9, that's my 8 hours there. 9 to midnight is 3 and 5 more is 8. So, if I'm going to do something watching a TV program, I need to do it before then, or I need to either get it so that it's recorded and I play it some other time. But it's changing my behavior. That's the key, right?
Wow. I have
on the
never
things that are most important.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, I jokingly picked flossing, but that actually is it's a reflection of the level of discipline you have, Jack. That's what inspires me beyond measure, because I mean, it starts at flossing, but it goes all the way to sit-ups and how many movies you watch, how many books you read, how many, crikey. It's just, there's just so much there, and it's overwhelming for somebody who doesn't do it at all. And I remember the tip that you gave me, and I would love you to share that before I try and wrap up, because I could talk to you for hours, by the way. One of the things you said to me when I was struggling to get into this discipline of consistently working out, you asked me to do something. Do you remember what it was, Jack? Where you said, put in an appointment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've taught a lot of people this. Let's say if you went to my website, you would see I have a lot of doctor's appointments. I don't wait for the car to break down, the car being me.
Yes.
I go to all the important doctors on a regular basis before we have trouble, right? And so I have lots of doctor appointments. And let's say I have a doctor appointment 9 a.m. I'm going to show up at their office at 8:45. And I'll bring my Kindle with me and get some reading done. I'm never going to sit there and read the year-old magazines that are sitting there. And so I'm okay reading my book for 15 minutes, but at 9 o'clock, I expect to be waited on. But how many times do we sit at the doctor's with a 9 o'clock appointment, arrive at 8:45, and we're still sitting at 9:30?
Yeah.
And that really frustrates me. It really makes me annoyed because I have a packed day and everything is packed. And here I am at 9:30. But on reflection, I thought about it and said, no, wait a second, if we ran our lives like this guy's running his business, we would have a lucrative life, because he's got or she's got 3 appointments all kind of stacked on top of one another. They got an assistant that puts the 3 patients in 3 rooms. They're taking their blood pressure and their pulse and getting ready. And then when they're out, the doc comes in, does his quick magic or her quick magic and gets out. And then they send you down to the appointment desk or the billing desk or whatever. And it's just like the doctor is like running around like a crazy man, but he's probably doing, 50% or 100% more in revenue generation because his day is packed all the way, minute by minute by minute. So if we could sit down, and I would recommend building your daily plan within 30 minutes of going to bed the night before, because your subconscious will work on optimal execution of it. And when you get up, you don't get up and make your way to the kitchen for a cup of coffee. I've never had a cup, but I've seen a lot of people. And so trying to wonder what they're going to do, wake up, and by the time they get their to-do list, I've already knocked half of mine out, because the night before I've got mine all made up and I'm ready to go. So I want to book everything like right on top of one another. So you booked this appointment with one of my assistants, and I have one assistant that handles my calendar. I'm not allowed to put anything on my calendar, but we have one person that books it so that it's packed, and it just goes one after another after another after another. And by the way, when you're jam-packed and you put your personal stuff in there as well, so your health and fitness and your doctor visits and your reading and whatever else it is, there's not room for Netflix, ran out of movies, or I need to go find more snacks and bad food to eat during the pandemic and all the rest. There's no room for that in my life. If you were to go and look at my activity that I took that was accomplished last year and compare it to this year, you would see the books I've read and the movies that I've watched are way down this year. And one could say, well, wait a second, with the pandemic, you've got more time. But when I read more of my books and watched the movies was when I was in flight. And I was 300,000 air miles. And so I don't have any air miles. And I filled my time with things that are going to be more productive while I'm on the land. So I have to really work hard to find reading time and movie time because my agenda is so packed with other things that are quote unquote controllable and more beneficial to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to try and wrap this one up. I was just thinking, given how a number of people are feeling right now, Jack, if you were to leave them with one or two pearls of wisdom that would uplift them today in this climate, what would they be?
Figure out what you really, really, really enjoy. Really enjoy. And if what you're involved in today isn't that, then craft a plan to go do that. Figure out how to get into a place, into a state that you really enjoy what you're doing. Because if you place yourself there, everything else gets easy that has to do with it. But it's hard. Work is hard for most people because they're engaged in something that they're not passionate about. So find your passion and pursue it, and the rest of the blocks kind of fall into place pretty readily. And the second thing that I would tell you is that if you walk through life with a feeling of gratefulness, that your community, whether that's your family and friends or your business associates, they can tell if you are walking in life with a sense of gratefulness. And, during this time of pandemic, people can say, what's he talking about? How can you be grateful? This is like the worst time of our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm an endurance athlete, and I fell on early December on one step, and I severed my quad tendon, which is worse than a broken leg. And I was in a brace for 4 months, and I was in physical therapy, not just at home, but going to the doctor for physical therapy 3 to 4 times a week. That just ended about a month ago. If the pandemic hadn't hit, I know I would have been traveling all over the world, speaking in front of my audiences and not doing my physical therapy. Today, I'm back to where I was physical fitness wise. And in the last 6 weeks, I've done 3 half marathons. And so I know I wouldn't be there without the pandemic. I'm very grateful for that. In April, I detected some growth on the top of my head and discovered that I had stage 3 malignant melanoma. And literally the end of April, the 24th of April, the surgeon took out of the top of my head the size of the palm of my hand, an inch thick out of here. And fortunately, we were able to get all of the cancer out, and I didn't require radiation and I didn't require chemo. And now I'm on a 3-month program where for the rest of my life, we'll come in and take chest x-rays and do all the examinations to make sure that it's not spreading and going anywhere. And had I not snagged that and had my hairstylist say, there's something ugly on the top of your head, you've got to get it looked at. I could be looking at either being dead by now or knowing that I'm dying somewhat soon. And I lost my wife in 2017 to cancer, so it becomes very personal. And then, as I mentioned, I was in this magical marriage. I mean, I met my wife when I was 16, and I lost her at the age of 68. And we'd never been without each other our whole lives. And I thought, well, that was a good run, but I guess the rest of my life I'll be alone. And here I am with this magical woman in Karen, and she's just taken my life to another level. She's a CEO and owner of a very successful company, and we just gel off of each other. And We participate with each other in activities and physical activities and running and swimming and all the kinds. And so, let me show you this. I mentioned my son, 41 years old. Every Father's Day, he gives me a coin, and this coin has number 16 on it. It represents his 16th year of being drug-free. And he was a serious methamphetamine addict. And when he was in his 20s, I actually didn't believe that he would live to be 30. And today he's been clean for 16 years. He's a successful entrepreneur. He has a wife. He has 2 lovely children. My first granddaughter, in baby Lucy Bonnie. And my life is just full of things to be grateful for, right? And when people are around me, they tell me I exude that essence. And people want to be around people that are grateful. And every one of us has something to be grateful for. So I tell people all the time, gosh, I don't care how tough it is out there. Find things to be grateful for. Hug the people that are involved in your gratefulness. Let them know how grateful you are. It's a powerful, powerful state to be in. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you've just filled my heart with complete gratitude. Jack, thank you so much. I will not cry on a podcast, but grateful to have your time because I know how busy you are. And I really, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with all of our listeners. Thank you so much, Jack.
Maria, my thanks to you because your voice is reaching a marketplace that I probably wouldn't be reaching. And if the hour or so that we shared with each other, if we just touched one person behaviorally that elevated their life, that's a pretty powerful thing to say. And
absolutely.
And that's you. That's not me. That's you.
All the way through. Now, if they wanted to reach you, Jack, if the listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what would the best way be? I know you've got a book coming out. I feel like I need to do another podcast on your book when it is out. You've got a book coming out, and you've also, if they wanted to reach you, what would the best way be?
So email's my preferred deal, right? So it's jack@jackdalysales.com. And Daly is Daly. So jack@jackdalysales.com. I read my own emails. I may not deal with all the emails, but I do read them, and then somebody that's best suited will take care of them. But I do answer a lot personally, as you know.
I know you do. Thank you so much, Jack, and my heartfelt gratitude for your time and for you being in my life. Thank you.
And big hugs to your family. Okay.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
You bet.
Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for tuning into the Unstoppable Leader podcast with me, your host, Maria Parissetti. And if I may ask you for a favor, please drop me a review on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. I'd love your feedback and love to hear what you think. And if you want to stay up to date with me and the business that I'm in, then please check out my LinkedIn page, Maria Parissetti, or our website, theunstoppableleader.com. That is theunstoppableleader.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, be unstoppable.